Hey doing, legends. There are two things you need to think about for your SuperCoach team heading into round 15. It's obviously a week there where you've got 25 players potentially available, a few guys on the bye, obviously with your dogs players there. And the question you need to ask yourself is, do I need to actually make a trade this week, right? And the couple of things that you need to think about is round 16. Obviously, the more players you can get on the park, the more chance of a higher score. Very clear as day there. Obviously, picking 13, let's just say you have 15 players available, you get your best 13, right? So does holding one of these guys that maybe you're not super excited about, but holding them this week, if they're going to kind of tread water with their price, stay somewhere near the same, like we're looking at guys like Smithies, who are going to play next week. Obviously, that's not really moving in price. He's not scoring incredibly well in recent history, but next week he might be able to do a pretty good job for you and score a 50 or a 55 or something like that and get some points on the board. You might have a guy that gets 20 or 15 or Cola 17 last week. And that's where someone like Smithies can help you. The other thing there on the other side, so potentially holding some of those guys might be the correct play this week. You've got a strong enough 17, like you might, in this scenario with my head-to-head team, I haven't mucked around with captaincy and vice. It's still the same as last week, but I've moved around things. Johnson's back this week, so that's good. Galvin's out. You've got Hughes out, Marnie out, these types of players. But I'm not going to be playing like a Liam Henry this week. Smithies, Sean Lane, Ethan Strange potentially. I've got Armstrong down here as well. So you won't likely have to play these types of guys, but are they going to be helpful for you next week? An option to sell this week is obviously going to be someone like Armstrong, who might not make his way back into the side. Strange will play next week, so it's a good one to think about. Same with Smithies, right? In holding him. Similar to that with someone like Hughes, like who do you trade them to in the front row forward position? Sean Lane is someone in a different category where he's actually out in round 16. He misses round 20 as well. Yes, he actually played really good off the bench last week, but is that a flash in the pan? We know he's had a really, really average season, and him at 411k, if you have some cash in the bank, similar to where, I got 124, some people might have 200, 300k, that you could move on from a Sean Lane in this scenario and in this team. That's the big one there, obviously, is if you're going to hold on to those guys that are good for next week or not, right? Make that decision. And then the second decision there is if you are going to make a trade this week, how much of an extra benefit is that going to make on your team this week? But then longer term, do they have that upside this week that can offset the potentially missing weeks in the future? Or is it important enough to get that player knowing that you're using another trade in a week where you probably don't have to, given it's just the dogs on the bye? Even if you have a Carraz and Max King and all these types of guys, right? Josh Curran, which my overall team don't have him in the head-to-head team. These types of guys, you can cover them this week very, very easily. And obviously with trades becoming more scarce and scarce, and we know how important they were in the back end of last year and every year, right? You do see teams start to fall off the wagon once they know their season's done. And that's where you see those massive scores like we saw with Kohler, with DCE, with Olakau'atu last year in that last few games, is because they were on a bit of a tear, playing really well, and you knew they were going to play all of their games to the end of the season. They weren't going to be resting, given they weren't making Origin or were fighting for a spot. Origin weren't making finals, were fighting for a spot to get in the final series. A lot of these teams are, and you'll see that with the Cowboys this year. Very likely they're going to be fighting for that spot in the finals. Guys like the Dolphins might be in that situation. Guys like Canberra, Warriors, all these types of players, teams are likely to be fighting for that spot in the 8, and therefore, similar to Para, all these types of teams will be fighting for that, so they're likely going to play all the way, but there will be plenty of teams that rest a lot of their players, and if you have trades available in the bank, you can use them in the back end, and that's where I think holding this week is going to be a really, really good idea, because I do think you can get a strong enough 17 on the park without those guys that are missing through a bye or obviously through a resting or an injury or something like that. So we will quickly go through the potential options in the positions, but for the most part, you might have to I really want you to look at your team this week and make those decisions according to that. But if you're looking for someone that's great for the next period of the bye schedule, it is Damien Cook, it's Jeremy Marshall-King. Following this week, it's going to be Reed Marnie as well, who's at that 65 average. Robson's a 66, but in Origin, you've got Jeremy Marshall-King the same as Harry Grant there. It's so close up top, 65.7 apiece for him and Grant. Grant plays Origin, Robson plays Origin. Reed's got a bye this week. I wouldn't be getting Blake Brayley. Appy playing 7 this week and goal kicking is definitely one to look at for sure. But is he, a small chance of playing Origin? I think so, but I don't think I'd be too worried about that. Jacob Little's out next week. You've got Connor Watson returning at 698k. I think he's going to score incredibly well, but does he have an Origin risk as well? Obviously, he can play between 2RF and hooker, and if he doesn't make Origin, I think he's the absolutely best player to pick in this position there. He has an 87.73 game average, 79 across the last 5. So they're definitely good options. Wade Egan plays the next chunk of games, but I think that he's a little bit down the totem pole for best options there. We speak about the front row forward position, and if you were to be looking to get rid of Samuel Hughes this week, the big question is, who would you go for, right? You can go just off pure averages and look up top, and Adam Fanua-Blake is the guy on the list that obviously doesn't play Origin. You got through round 13 bye. He's at 75.6 the average, and lost a little bit of cash last week given he had that low score the week before. So he's at 737. It's basically where he started the year at. He's scoring a lot of tries and doing good things, and that could continue. It could obviously slow down as well, but he's the best option right now. Second best option right now is going to be Joe Tarpany. So he had a cracking week, obviously before his bye, and now he only has that round 19 remaining. So he's the next guy on the list at a 63 average that you might want to look at. The time to get Jack DeBellin has passed, given he has a bye next week, misses round 20 as well. Can't believe Flegler, poor fella, might be out. Well, definitely likely going to be out for the year, and then could affect his career. It's really, really sad. And obviously that's a little bit hyperbolic, but I think their worry is that the fact that it's not, their treatment's not responding, the nerves still in a lot of damage, but yeah, not good. There on that front, you can go for the Tigers guys as well if you want to go a little bit cheaper. Stefano's down at 529. Minutes last week were pretty good, but not getting the scoring and the output that he was at the start of the year. And you do see that with a lot of forwards throughout the season, that because their body gets bashed around, they don't have that same vigor in their running that they did at the beginning of the year. And we're seeing that with Stefano in recent history a little bit. Obviously, he had a 3 and 5 game average, a touch higher than that of 60 prior to this, but surprisingly over the last 3 weeks, he's still averaging that 57, which is solid enough with that 45 last week. If you're covering King this week, obviously, I think it's probably one of those Tigers guys, which means like a Samuel Fainu is going to be a more interesting option for you. Alex Twal as well, 53 and 49 for those two guys. And Samuela went up 24.5k last week because he's gone back-to-back high 50s into a 49, which is really, really cool. So he's probably the one you want to look at. If you're holding on to Liam Henry, then he's a guy to keep sticking with until he peaks in price. And probably after this week is going to be the good time to look to move him on. Obviously at a decent price there, but I really do think if you're in the market for a front row forward, you do have to go up top, and that's as far as I'd go. If you can't get up there to one of those top couple of guys, I just don't think it's worth trading at all with those guys, and in a position that's not really super relevant. You've got these two guys like a Henry and a Hughes who are both in their teams and playing on a week-to-week basis outside of head knocks and little restings and stuff like that mid-game, like Hughesy. They're not guys that, if you've got a Jensen as well, these types of players, like they're going to be, and Willison, they're going to be helpful for you in round 19 when the big dogs are out. So, they're not worth selling either. That's for sure. So, that's the front row forward position. For the 2RF, I mentioned Lane, he's definitely, can be a sell. Kaipi Paul, Katoa, Dave Fafita, all holds. Fafita, obviously a good buy as well as Katoa. Both those guys going down a little bit in price, a little bit less than they were last week. Plath there at 508 had a really good game before their bye as well, coming back from his concussion. So he was really solid as well. You can decide what you want with Smithies if you want to hold or sell on that front as well. If you're still holding on to Angus Crichton, you'll get a good score out of him this week and you can decide next week. I'd be waiting for after Origin for Isaiah Yeo. He's obviously one of the top 3 average players there at the moment. So someone to look at longer term. Aiken, definitely a guy that you can look at this week. His 3-round average is 75. Has been absolutely incredible. His base stats have been through the roof. So Ewan Aiken is 673. He'll go up a little bit further over the next few weeks with a lower break even. So Ewan Aiken is one I would be looking to target in the 2RF or the center wing position at 673. Not the end of the world price-wise. There's still a little bit to grow there as well. The big worry this week is obviously Lucas off the bench, but I do think you hold this week and then decide what you want to do in his buy next week, because after 106 there, he's got a lower break even and made 20k last week and will go up even further this week if he can score somewhere around that 50 mark or something like that. Jeremiah Nanai, if you are holding on to him, I'd probably understand the sell, given he's going to lose some cash this week again, even if he scores well, and then we'll miss 16, 19 and potentially be a bench guy in the upcoming weeks. Hamole Alakawatu down to 75k this week as well, could potentially be a sell. If you've got McInnes, you hold on to him for this week and then decide. But the 2RF position, it's a pretty lowly one. It looks like Preston, we might actually get a little bit less time out of him than we might have thought. So at least next week off, and hopefully he's back sort of around 17. So if you did buy, I think you can hold. He should be able to keep his spot and get that 80 minutes because he was doing really well. Colin Matangi, if you're looking at him, don't any further. Like Cam Murray's back, so that's the big news there on that one. Yeah, the Tigers guys, you still got Isaiah Papali'i and Bateman out at this point. Both for more, just keeps getting moved to center. So if you're holding, sweet. Otherwise, yeah, don't look to buy. Same with Sean Bloor, just hold, don't sell. But yeah, that's it. Cartwright, if you bought a couple of weeks ago, he's done really well the last two, up 23k there. If you got Curran, hold on to him as well. What about Asu Kapoa moving to the Panthers there? It's going to be a fun one there for sure. Connolly Lemuelo at 591. It's still fairly expensive. Like he was down under 500k, I think. Yeah, 100% launch. But he obviously has a really nice run coming up and can score some tries and do some good things. But he's up against Talakai this week, which would be pretty tough. Sorensen's down to 545. Not the same this year, so I wouldn't be climbing into him. And then Talakai is an interesting option if you want him at the 2RF center wing position. It's definitely something to look at there, obviously, if you want to. How many weeks it's going to be is the question mark. And then Cleese Haas as well with 444k there with that 67 last week. He's a little bit up and down. You see a 50 average over the last three. That includes that 67. So that's something to note. One person I did, or a couple of people I forgot to mention in the hooking position, obviously Brendan Hands. He picked up a 30 odd, which is not ideal. And I think that with him now, probably not worth making that trade. And even if you've got a Lussick, like just hold Lussick for now. Unfortunately, he lost some cash last week with his 7 that he ended up with. But yeah, he's someone that you can just leave there for now. You've got Hands and you've got Talon De Silva, who unsure at this point how many games he's going to get. But I would just hold off on that one unless you needed a scorer this week in your hooking position. Then maybe jump on. But outside of that, he's probably one to wait on there in your hooking position. For the halfbacks, you do see Hughes and Johnson. Well, Johnson back this week, and they're definitely the two best half options. And then you have got Walker. So Sammy Walker following that one there, given he has had his buy out of the way. He's just got 19 coming up as like an important one. And outside of that, no one really to look at there. You've got KO Weeks in the 5/8 position. You can move things around, obviously, with Dylan Brown. You got Luke Brooks, these types of guys you can move around in there. And yeah, with Fogarty still a little bit of a ways away of returning. We do have those guys to have a look at, and really outside of that, Johnson and Hughes, he'll get back into goal kicking and all the rest, which will be good if you want to grab him at 710 or Hughes at 674. And then you have Sammy Walker, as we said there, in a really good spot there at 699. So all those guys fairly cheap and in good positions, all having buys in round 19 as their next one. So that's the half position. If you do want to trade Galvin, I understand it could be like a couple of week injury, could be out for that couple of weeks. KO Weeks, speaking of weeks, is a guy at 486 who's in a really, really good purple patch, 69.3, the 3-round average, scoring a lot of tries at the moment. I think he'll do really well against the Cowboys this week. So he's the smoky under 500k. And one I forgot to mention last week was actually Cody Walker, who ended up with 103 and did really good work there. And then speaking of 5/8s at the moment, you've got Jack Whiten, who had a really good game last week as well. But I'm not going to expect the world out of those guys going forward, given where their team's at. And yeah, they're going to play against some slightly harder opposition like the Broncos over the next couple of weeks. Jaden Campbell, there's actually a lot more 5/8s at the moment than there was. You've got Jaden Campbell, you've got Jack Cole, and you've also got Tyron Wishart as well at 501k. So all three of those guys doing really well. Wishart up 64k this week, Cole up 96, and then Jaden Campbell will start going up now after his 75. So you could have a look at Campbell. He obviously has a little bit more runway than that of Cole, given he's got a bye next week and 19. Plays a couple of games in between, most likely, and then he's got Cleary coming back after that. And then Wishart, he's got a runway all the way through till round 19, and yeah, could do really well. So that 122 was massive last week. And if you want to jump on, it's obviously a nice time to do so. You'll get a couple more rises, a couple more decent scores before you might have to sell him. Onto the centre wings. As I said, Ewan Aitken's a really good one to follow there. Blaze Talangi's got all the way to 604k. Hold on to him for now. He's obviously got plenty of talent and is scoring really, really well. Holmes actually made some cash last week after his 140, the a couple of weeks prior before Origin. So that's good. But yeah, it wasn't too crash hot last week. Hopefully it improves there. Iro holding on to Meany, could have a look at for sure. They have a pretty nice run, the Storm, but that was a big game for him. Asako, Dom Young, you've got Manu to have a look at as well. Asako obviously gets through the next couple of big buys, plays 17-20 as well. So yeah, really, really good over that next month of play and is still under 700k, which after that couple of low scores makes sense. Stranger says there's a bit of a hold there. So if you did want to look at moving someone on, you've got Lomax, the big scorer there, 82.9. His average now after that 170, which is absolutely incredible. But yeah, hard to buy him now. Obviously, Manu, still very expensive, playing centers. Parramatta doing a little bit better. So, him and Dom Young in that similar position, very, very high in their price, but both still guys to have a look at, along with Ruben Garrick, who now has a little bit of a nicer draw there for sure. And I'm sitting there in this head-to-head team without Garrick. And I think from here on, that will be a bit of a mistake. But the question is, who can you sell to get to these higher price guys? That's the big worry at the moment. So, yeah, that's where I'm at in this side. But, yeah, you got To'o, you're obviously holding. Outside of that, center wing position, it's a little bit of a tough one to go for outside of guys like Ewan Aitken. The Gagai's has a bye next week, but if you're not needing numbers next week, then Gagai's still really solid. And then Tommy Talau, 635k now, up 102. Absolutely incredible there on that one. So center wing's a strange position at the moment. And then you do move to the fullback position. And yeah, you've got Weeks obviously down there you could pick up at that cheaper price. Garrick, you could go down there as well. Chance is not too bad. Obviously, he picked up 101 last week. Latrell, if you want to take that plunge of him potentially not making Origin. Edwards is back this week. Do you pick him or Tedesco? Who do you think is going to make Origin? A lot of questions around Origin, which is the big thing. And then Drinkwater next week is a question mark as well, given he misses 3 games in the next, 13 or whatever it is there to round out the season. Tamati Martin, still good things, but he's actually ended up at 642k. Absolutely incredible. If you're still holding to Fuller right now, then maybe just wait the one more week, get him as a scorer next week and move on. Fletcher Sharp, wait one more week and then make a decision on him if he's still in the team in round 17 for sure. I think that's probably the play. Suafalongo, just hold on to him for now. Not a crazy big score, but solid enough. You got Campbell, you can slot down there as well. Jacob Gagai's ended up making a decent amount of cash over the last few weeks. Unfortunately, not a great 3-round average, but he had a very big negative break even there. So that's that. Dane Laurie had a big score last week, up 76k, but he's out obviously there as well. So yeah, fullback position, not the best one at the moment. Really, all of them are kind of just average with all the Origin guys out and a few players in form, but most of them are the Origin guys, so it makes it hard to purchase any of them. So I think this week's very much a holding week for teams. If you want to take that plunge, if you've got well over 20 trades left, and making those upgrades this week can work out well. But outside of that, I think it's a week to potentially hold if you can. So that's the SuperCoach buy, hold, sell for the week. I hope that helped you guys, and we'll see you in the trades video for SuperCoach.